Hey, what's going on, Natty Dads? It is week 8 of the maintenance diet. I skipped week 7 because it was just a crazy week and I just really didn't get around to doing anything, but thankfully nothing interesting happened. So, week 8, something did happen that was kind of interesting, or at least for us trying to figure out this whole thing. So, week 8 was really interesting for me because I finally felt like my diet fatigue had completely gone away. And the way that I felt that was that my appetite started to regulate a lot more. Whereas coming off of the diet, what I realized was throughout the day I was pretty much hungry at all times. At the end of week 7, what I realized was is that when I got towards the end of the day, I really wasn't hungry for my usual oatmeal meal that I have at the end of the day that kind of helps set me up for a good sleep and for a good workout the next morning. I didn't really want that, and so my hunger started to become much more satiated with just like dinner and just sort of meals throughout the day and snacks. And so I was kind of interested. I'm like, okay, I think I'm finally adapted to the maintenance phase, and which makes a lot of sense because if you look at the research that says how you should go about a maintenance and a fat loss phase, you should do a maintenance phase for just as long as you did your diet phase. So it should be a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, I didn't ever practice that before. Now I had always kind of been the kind of person who jumped right into maintenance and then sort of like right after that go into a bulk because I was naive and I didn't really know what I was doing. But this time around, I did everything based on the evidence just to see if it actually worked for me, because we all know that science works in a lab, and we know that very controlled environments, science can make a lot of sense, and that's good to know. But in the real world, how do we make that applicable for us, right? It's not that science is wrong, it's just, well, how do we actually make that apply to our lives? Can we actually adhere to something like that? And so that was a really cool thing to notice in week 8, because week 8 was basically the point in which my diet and my maintenance phase were the exact same. And that was really cool. So using Macro Factor to help coach me through this, it has decreased my calories once again. So I've decreased my calories from, I think, 2,800 down to like 2,650. So 150, 200 calories. I forget the exact numbers, but it's about that range, which is really interesting because I was eating more right out of maintenance. And now that my body has sort of become adapted to that and I'm hitting my weight goal. So I set a weight goal for myself that was 160. If you guys remember, I sort of ended around 157. So in 8 weeks, I've gained about 3 pounds, and I've gained it very slowly, usually in increments of 0.3 to 0.5 pounds per week. And with vacations and lots of summer social eating involved, I'm not really surprised by this. I'm actually very happy that it happened as gradually as it did, considering all things considered. So being at 160, I feel really good. My energy is way better than it was in my deficit. I feel like this is a good sitting weight for me at this time. Now, after this maintenance phase, I'm going to go into a rather long bulk, but it's going to be the most controlled bulk I've ever done. So my gaining phase is going to be from the end of August all the way to the end of December. And then I'm going to do the traditional start a cut in January type of thing. But this is a 1-year plan. This isn't me just jumping on the January bandwagon because I got 50 pounds to lose or whatever. So I'm approaching it much more strategically, but I'm also using the winter and knowing that there's going to be lots of winter comfort foods and holidays and things like that to really emphasize a good gaining phase. And I think that's probably a pretty positive thing for me. And then go back into a cut probably from January to March, and then maintenance, and then cut, and so on and so forth. So anyway, so that's week 8. I think it's been one of the more interesting weeks. Week 7 was pretty boring. I was home with my daughter all week because her daycare was closed. And so it was just kind of like chaos, and there's not really anything interesting happening. It was honestly, other than just trying to manage having a toddler at home and eating reasonably, I've noticed that I don't emotionally eat as much as I used to. When I don't have any sort of guardrails, I tend to, I wouldn't even call it emotional eat, I would call it stress eating. And it's not like I'm under a ton of stress right now, but like if life just feels like, there's no sort of control, I tend to overeat as a way to comfort myself from feeling out of that control. And I've learned that about myself, and I think a lot of us probably have had bouts of that in our lives, or maybe you're going through it right now. It's all good. I no judgment here. I've been there. And one of the reasons why I like to track my calories is simply because it does keep the guardrails on. If I do have that urge to want to eat something that's outside of what my calorie allotment is going to design for me, then I have that second thought instead of that just first initial reaction. So sometimes, I think a lot of people give calorie counting, calorie tracking, macro tracking, a bad rap. And I get why it sucks and why it can be mentally exhausting, and it can also just be hard to manage. But for me anyway, it's the guardrails that I need, the same way that like a kid that's bowling for the first time needs those, bumpers in order to not just get a gutter ball every time. That's kind of how I view it too, is I'm not trying to get gutter balls every single time with my weight. And this helps me keep the rails on a little bit better. Now, obviously, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not new to this. I know the pitfalls. I know the mental trip ups. I've gotten over those. I know how to combat those. Maybe we could do a video on that. Maybe that would be something that I do in the future. But anyway, I get that I'm a veteran, so this is easier for me. But if I had to give any advice to somebody who's maybe tracked calories in the past, kind of have a hard time staying consistent with it, I totally get it. If this isn't your mission and it's not going to take up at least 25% of your time and interest, and you're not willing to sacrifice other things, I get why it would be hard to manage. But at least for short periods of time, maybe simply 2 weeks, maybe a month, it's good to get recalibrated to see exactly the food you're consuming, if it's pushing you towards your goals or if it's pushing you away from your goals. And sometimes it's just a good, like I said, calibration to see where you're at. And then you go, okay, yeah, I was over consuming here. Maybe this was more calories than I thought it was, that kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, that's my video for today. I'm going to keep up maintenance for another 3 weeks, and then we're going into a gaining phase, which I'm a little nervous about, because gaining weight, even if it's slow, is not a fun thing for me mentally. I've never really gotten on board with that mindset, so this will be a new venture for me. What I'm doing right now is I am taking a month off from lifting weights. I watched a video by Dr. Mike Israetel, who was talking about the benefits of taking time off from lifting weights. Now, it's provided that you're lifting, 365 days a week, or at least you're on some sort of training plan for a year. And so taking a month off is good for your joints, it's good for your muscles, it's good for your mental, capacity, which I actually kind of disagree with, because working out for me is very therapeutic. It is good for my mental health. So I've just been doing like walking and things like that, which is great, but it doesn't really wake me up and get me going the same way that lifting weights does. But I want to commit to something new. I want to try something new. I want to experience a new journey, a new approach, strategic insight, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, that's my video for today. I'll see you in a future video.